When you're born, you're either an innie or an outie. That's about your belly button. But what about boats? Today we're going to talk about boats born with outies. Hi, I'm Sean from Cove Lessons in Boating. And when you decide on the type of boat you're going to buy, you have a style, whether it's a pontoon or a bow rider or a cruiser or center console or any type of boat. One of the choices that you make beyond the style and the hull design is going to be how it's powered. Outboard engines have really evolved a lot in the last few years, and there are some really great positives to outboard engines because they have taken the boat market by storm, and really you see them now in applications that you would never see them before. You see them on big cruisers, on big day boats in multiple configurations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 engines on one boat. But today we're going to focus on the problems because there are some inherent issues with outboard engines that you'll want to be aware of. Problem number 1, outboard engines are visible. What do I mean by that? An engine in your car or truck or an engine in a sterndrive IO is not visible, and it's not in the way. An outboard is right in the back of the boat, right in the center or across the back if you have multiple. So your engine is not only visible, there are an aesthetic issue if you don't like seeing it, but it's also kind of in the way sometimes for swimming and getting on and off the boat and activities like putting on a wakeboard or getting in and out of tube. The engine is right there in the way, and it can make it slightly harder to move from one side of the boat to the other. Problem number 2. The center of gravity on an outboard boat is different. When you have an outboard powered boat, all the weight of the engine is at the back of the boat versus an inboard outboard where the weight of the engine, being that it's more like a car or truck engine, there's a bigger portion of that weight that's further forward on the inside of the transom or inside the boat. The outboard engine is bolted to and hangs directly off the back of the boat, so it does change the balance in the way the boat drives. Everything else being equal, it can make the boat a little bit harder to get on plane. If they produce the same amount of power, the weight being further ahead in an inboard outboard will be an advantage. However, the outboard engine being lighter usually makes up for that difference. Problem number 3, they do handle differently in rough water. Because the weight of them is lighter and because they're shifted further back, you'll find that they don't sit down as heavy in the water and don't have the same displacement that as an inboard outboard does. All other things being equal, it may ride in a real bad chop a little rougher than an inboard outboard boat. Problem number 4, cost. Outboard engines have a lot of R&D dollars that have been put into them over the last 10 to 15 years, and manufacturers are recouping that. They're getting more power, quieter engines with more precision out of smaller packages, and that costs money to develop. So all other things being equal, there have been more changes in the outboard industry than the inboard outboard power, so those costs are transferred to the buyer when you buy it. When you have a 300 horsepower inboard outboard versus a 300 horsepower outboard, usually you'll find the power of the outboard is slightly more expensive. Problem number 5, outboard engines seem to have a little less bite in the water, which makes it slightly harder to maneuver at the dock and definitely gives you less thrust when you tow a boat. So outboard engines, because of the smaller diameter props, they won't have the same thrust around the docks. The benefit is because they drag less in the water, they tend to have a higher top end speed, all other things being equal, and they're lighter. But if you try to tow a boat off the rocks, which doesn't happen very often for you, but it happens for me, or if you're trying to maneuver around a dock and you want to have a lot of reverse thrust, you'll find the outboard doesn't have quite as much bite on the water. Problem number 6, old outboards are noisy. You don't find it today in a current outboard. If you're buying a brand new 60 horse Yamaha or 300 horse Mercury or anything that has been produced over the last few years, they are whisper quiet. In fact, when you're going down the lake, sometimes you don't even hear it and the loudest thing is the wind. However, outboards that are 10 years old or older did not have near the same muffling capability and definitely made it hard to have a conversation in the boat when you were underway. When you were born, you didn't have the choice of outie or innie, but you do have that choice when you decide what boat you're buying and how it's powered. If you want to know more about outboard versus inboard outboard or stern drives, check out this video here for a comparison of both. Thanks for joining us on today's Cove Lessons in Boating. We'll see you out on the water.